we were both like, man, it feels like there's so much pressure on us. If I date you, I have to marry you. And not saying I don't necessarily want to marry you, but in this moment, I just want to get to know you in that area. I want to date you. I want to see what it's like. Like, can we just date? Like, can we be Christians who date without that pressure? And
love how you dropped that.
Come on.
So smooth.
Good job. You were waiting for that moment.
Totally.
They were the original Christians who date.
That's right.
Hello and welcome to the Christians Who Date podcast with Andrea, Allie,
Kalli
Lauren
Christopherson.
and we have two special guests. One of them actually just introed the podcast, I think, like as good or maybe even better as I usually intro it. So, but we want to introduce our guests. We have Patrick and Katie Hern, formerly Katie Christopherson,
Woo.
That's right.
on the podcast. So Katie is Kalli's sister.
It's true.
One of our first fans, really.
I'm a diehard.
But do you guys want to say hi and just like tell us, who you are? Just the, the like short version of who you guys are.
Who are you and where did you come from?
That's right. The woods. So we're Patrick and Katie. We are, what do? We are worship pastors at a local church here. We live in Helena, Montana. Patrick is in sales for his job. We have two amazing little girls. Cleo, she's 4 years old, and Flory will be 2 in a few weeks, which is wild.
They're the best.
So wild.
So crazy.
Yeah.
We've been married for over 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we are crushing life.
We're crushing it. That's
Crushing
right.
That's actually
right.
true.
Crushing it.
Currently crushing life.
Oh, man.
Put that on our resume.
Also, Katie, would you like to share your actual quote of what you said about our podcast in your own words?
Yeah. I mean, I listened to the first one and I was like, wow, they're actually legit. And that's what I told Kalli.
And it's been one of our highest compliments so far. So,
Yeah, Katie was one of our first listeners, one of our first Spotify.
That's right. I was like, I feel like I'm actually listening to a real podcast. So, high praise.
it was high praise. We were like, we don't know what we're doing. We're just jumping in here. Oh my gosh.
Literally, yeah. But we don't want to tell you guys too much, but we don't know what we're doing. So
you'd never know.
Just out here winging it.
We're just out here one podcast at a time figuring it out. But,
Also, Andrea, you know how you have that rule about the only people that can come onto the podcast are people that have lived it with you? Well, Katie's lived with me, many times. And I've lived with you. So by default, Katie's lived with you.
I feel like Katie and I have actually lived in the same house. So we're kind of stretching the rules.
That's true. Different times.
But we did live in the same house in Reading, but at separate times.
Yeah,
and Katie did stay in your room once.
Yeah, we did. That's right. I came to visit, and I slept on your floor next to your bed.
Yeah. Tight.
What a time that was. Yeah, that Trudy Trail house. Yeah. So, I mean, for anyone who's like listened to all these episodes, Katie and Naomi and Kalli, Naomi, who we had earlier with her husband Tim, were all in the Trudy Trail house before I moved in. And then, Kalli and Naomi stayed, obviously. And then Katie moved out. Did you move back to Montana at that time?
Mm-hmm. I moved because Patrick and I were engaged.
Oh,
engaged.
Oh my goodness.
Snap.
Oh, snap. Don't worry guys, we're about to fully dig into that whole story because Katie is more than just our number one fan.
There's a lot more to this face.
She and Patrick have an incredible story, and honestly, like they like right now, like Patrick said, they're crushing it at life. They have 2 adorable girls. Like they're just like living this beautiful dream in Montana. But the road to get here was, you know, it had some curves, it had some turns, there were some bumps along the way.
God bless the broken road, you know. Yeah, Patrick, could you hum a few bars?
Yeah, we've been really wanting them to sing, so I think now's the moment.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, right.
But anyway, yeah, we wanted them to come on here because there's so many roads to like getting a healthy marriage, and I feel like you only hear the side of a lot of stories that are like, it was beautiful, we met, it was like everything just worked out perfectly, and we're like, we want to hear like the hard stuff, because I think sometimes you can count yourselves out because, you know, you're like, oh, my story doesn't look the way that like the movies do, so, you know, it must not be right or whatever. And I've had so many friends that have gone through similar things, and so I'm like, we need to talk about this, because like it, you know, I just feel like it'll help people that are in the middle of like trying to figure it out and deciding. And so yeah, we're gonna jump in. We'll kind of start from the top. So Katie and Patrick, how did you guys meet?
Well,
I'll take that one.
It's a beautiful story. When I remember when I was about, I think 6 or 7, my family and I, we left a church here in Helena, and we went to look around for some churches, and we went to Katie's parents' church, Katie and Kalli's parents' church, called Neighborhood Assembly, and they were doing they were doing some remodeling in the front foyer. So I remember, I have to tell you all of this because of what happens, is I remember walking through all this construction, getting to the lobby, and then once we got into the lobby, I distinctly remember Pastor Norm, Katie and Kalli's dad, was standing there greeting people, and at next to him was Katie just hanging out. And I remember like looking at her and being like, wow, she's beautiful, that girl's gorgeous. Like, and from that moment, I kid you not, crush. I was totally all about Katie.
Let me tell you what I looked like at this age. I was
gonna say, Katie, you gotta share the look.
I was a little freckle-faced, frizzy redheaded child. And I think I had glasses at the time. And my shining factor was that I had no front teeth. Like literally 4 of my front teeth fell out at the same time. And so like I was good. I was in the middle / beginnings of a very long awkward stage.
Great.
With this sweet man.
That's great.
The heavens parted.
I was just crazy about it. Yeah, seriously. Like I just remember from that point on.
He had dove's eyes.
Yeah.
I just had a crush on Katie. I was always Katie. I was like, oh my gosh, Katie's beautiful in every stage. And yeah, it was great.
Sweet man.
Yeah.
If anyone is like not watching on YouTube and you're just listening, Kalli and Lauren and I are all cheesing right now.
Yeah, it's so sweet already. This is so new. This is all new to me.
Yeah, Kalli, we're like such a spectrum because Kalli lived this, and Lauren
in real time.
Lauren's literally never heard this story before.
Anything, and I love it. I'm like about to cry already.
And I'm like somewhere in the middle. So
so great.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Patrick, that's how your crush began. Katie, when did your crush on Patrick begin?
My crush on Patrick began when we were kids. I remember probably 8 or 9. I was like, oh, he's so cute. And like my way of like showing affection at the time was like, Kalli would help me sometimes, but we would like chase Patrick down and just like try to beat him up, you know?
Beat him
up.
Yeah.
Just like hit him and throw stuff at you. I don't even know.
Make fun of me. Yeah, that was great.
We were
I was so
we were
confused.
jerks, honestly.
Yeah,
It was
we really were.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely flirting at that age, though.
100%.
In 8th grade, I used to hit boys with my folder.
Your folder? That's right. That's another thing I've never heard of.
Well, they're bringing out of me, Lauren. They're bringing out of
it's a real thing. Real thing.
I just want to validate that's really how you flirt at that age.
It's true. You don't know what else to do. But my crush kind of like went in and out. Like I would really like him for a while, and then it was like, we're just friends, and then I liked him for a while. But yeah,
and of course, like we were all young, and so we'd never have conversations, and we would go to we obviously went to the same church, and we'd see each other, but we just wouldn't talk. Man, like with my other guy friends, we'd be like, oh, dude, you know who's like a babe? It's like Katie. And I'd always be like, yeah, totally. Yeah, she's really cool. And like just huge wall. I didn't want anyone to know my precious secret of like how much I would even say. And my parents were like, hey, who are you hanging out with? And if like Katie was sitting next to me, I'd be like, I don't know. And I could not say like Katie and I, because it was so much like an intimate thing. Like, you're a kid, so it's like, oh my gosh, what if they find out?
It's true. It's really vulnerable.
It is.
Yeah.
Your crushes as a kid. Yeah, you don't want anyone to know.
No. My childhood crush still doesn't know. Keep that locked down.
Are you ready to tell him right now, Kalli?
Who is it? Kalli?
That's right. Katie and Patrick know.
Yeah,
we
know.
To the grave.
Okay, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah, another time.
All I know is that it was for like 12 years or something crazy.
You know, I'm a
oh my gosh.
Pine. I'm a piner. What can I say?
Oh yeah.
I feel like I know no one on this podcast today. Everything is news to me.
All these new people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So didn't talk about it because we don't have conversations at that age. Like, holding it close to the chest, holding the cards close to the chest.
Well, and I had two things going against me. First of all, like we, like as we progressed in youth group and stuff, we had a pretty segregated youth group. And so we just wouldn't hang out. Plus I was homeschooled and you don't talk to girls. So.
Yeah. 2 strikes.
That's right. Also,
oh my gosh.
What would you guys say like kind of like the dating culture you grew up in was? Did you guys like talk about it? Did you not? Yeah, within church at least.
Yeah. So I feel like there was no dating culture.
That's what I said too.
Yeah, there was none. It was funny. I was actually thinking about this today. Like at youth group, no one dated, but then at my school, like, people are getting crazy. And so I saw like 2 extremes. But I was way more invested in youth group. And it was very much like the, I kiss dating goodbye thing. Like we don't date, we court. And it's like, you're going to pick like whoever you date, you're going to marry. And so you better be thinking about that. And so it was just like a lot of pressure, it felt like, put on a relationship, especially when we're like 15 sitting there, it's like, you better like know that they're the one before you start dating. And maybe they didn't say that, but that was very much like, I took that away, like very much so.
Yeah. It's weird. I was thinking about it too. It's like, it's nothing, I can't point to like some youth leader or some like a parental moment where they're like, this is how you do stuff. It's just something I picked up in a mindset I carried, that eventually I'll get married, but I have no idea what it's like to go from being 15 to having like these feelings to like marriage. Like, what does that even look like? What does that feel like? How do you breach that gap? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? Things like that. I just no idea.
There was no teaching about like how to date at all.
And once again, there probably could have been, but just what was ingrained in my head was just like kind of big question mark. And kind of what Katie was saying, like we had couples in our youth group, but they were kind of like the shady couples that you're like, well, you don't want to be like that. So it's like, well, great. I'll just never date. But the biggest thing was like, if you don't necessarily date, you court to get married. And so that was like, once again, kind of coming back to like that pressure of like, if you're going to date someone, it has to be the one. And so it kind of felt like this one shot you had.
Yeah, like you basically ruin someone if you if you hang out with them one-on-one, like the Pride and Prejudice days.
Yeah. Painted forever.
Okay, so how do you think that kind of played into, you've talked about it a little bit, but how do you think that played into your experience dating, like, you talked about it as like a young high schooler a little bit, but even further down the road, like in your 20s.
Yeah. So, we actually didn't become friends. So, I mean, we were met at 7. We didn't become friends until like probably like 21 or so. I had gone to a ministry school before that, and then I came home, and we started hanging out a little bit, and we started hanging out in like a group. And so when we actually just like started talking about like dating, I mean, it took a long time. We hung out as we were friends for like a couple years after that.
Yeah. It took a lot for us to get to that point. And for me, honestly, Katie was the first person I dated. So I didn't have like a dating life. And I always kind of just held this like crush / interest, infatuation with Katie. All through that, even when she left, like I'd be around some of our friends and she would be in California, and one of our friends would get a phone call and it'd be Katie, and I'd be like, oh, you're talking to Katie, that's cool. Yeah. So it was just always kind of weird. And I remember we started hanging out, and then our youth pastors, like we would hang out at our youth pastor's house a lot. And so one night we had a fire, and I was with my youth pastors, and they're like, who do you want to invite over? I was like, well, I would like to invite over some ladies, and just joking. And my youth pastor was like, cool, let's invite over Katie. And I was like, oh my gosh, let's invite over Katie. And so like we all had a fire, the youth pastors left, and it was just Katie and I. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is our first time together.
Here we are.
Oh.
Yeah. Unsupervised.
Yeah. How old were you all at that age?
That's when we were probably like 21.
Yeah.
So we were older. Yeah.
Were you nervous? Because you're like, oh my gosh, we're alone.
Yeah. I just didn't know what to say. It's so odd because here's you're sitting across with a person that you've known for like years. You have shared experiences, shared friends, but yet you haven't had like a full-fledged conversation. But yet I know like so many details of her life. Like I know who her family, like all that stuff, and I'm just like, how do I get to know this person?
Yeah. And then I think for me, like it's like it was really hard for me to cross the like friend boundary there, like because we had become friends, and then at like 21 we started hanging out, and then eventually when we started talking about dating, it was like I was like, I'm having a really hard time like crossing this over with the pressures that I grew up with of like, I don't know if you're the one for me, versus like you've always been a friend to me. And seeing you in a more romantic way, my brain was like swirling, and it was like I got really stuck for a very long time. So that was kind of how everything impacted me. But yeah.
Katie, did you date anyone else like during that time? Because I know Patrick hadn't dated anybody, but did you date other people? Like
I hadn't been in like an actual relationship, but I had like dated people, and like there's one guy we had talked once again for years. It's like that was like my MO. We just like talk for years, and then it doesn't really go anywhere. I wasn't like in an actual like relationship though.
Yeah. Okay. So then how did you guys cross that friendship boundary, or like where did it go from there?
So a couple of things kind of happened. Was I would say like pretty small attempts to kind of break that ice. I remember one fire, I was like, man, Katie, it's been so cool getting to know you. She's like, and Kate was like, yeah, totally. I was like, yeah, just how we've been hanging out together and just kind of growing deeper. And I was like, it's really cool. And Katie replied, yeah, it's been great getting to know you. And like, our other friends, like that guy and this guy, it's like so great. And so I was like, dang it. So I was like, well, that didn't work.
I was like, friend zone.
Friend zone. And then one time, early on, like when we went over, we both got invited over to our youth pastor's house, just randomly out of the blue. And so we showed up, and because my youth pastor was like, hey, I'm going to make dinner, come on over and just hang out. I was like, sweet. And I thought it was just me. And so I showed up, and then all of a sudden Katie showed up, and I was like, what's going on? And our youth pastor's wife, her name was Jan, was sitting at her computer. There was no food made. And she's like, oh, I'm not making you dinner. Like, here's a gift card to like a restaurant. Go and talk about this. And we were like, okay.
That's amazing.
Classic
Go,
Jan.
Wow, what a move.
I freaking
Jan
love
Lemon.
Jan. I'm using that.
I think I've met Jan. Have I met Jan, Kalli?
Yeah, you
Okay.
You stayed at her house.
She's awesome.
That's what I thought. Okay, let's go.
Let's go, Jan.
So immediate sweat, just panic. We drive there.
Wait, where'd you all eat? I don't know why. It sounds important.
Chili.
Just like Michael Scott.
I was going to say, we were just talking about Michael Scott before this, so this is hilarious. Okay. Get those baby back ribs.
That's
I
right.
want my baby
I
back,
want my
baby.
baby back.
So we're at Chili's, and another issue that we found out, or we kept running into it with our relationship, was Katie was very internal processor. I'm an external guy, but I avoid conflict. And so we're at dinner. We know why we're at dinner. And I'm avoiding the subject. I'm like full of any conversation other than us, because I was really afraid that once again, this was my one shot. And if I don't do it perfectly, we're not going to make it or whatever. And so finally at the end of dinner, about right when we paid, Katie was like, well, should we talk about why we're here? I was like, yeah, let's do it. At that point, we were just basically like, hey, I'm interested in you. And Katie's like, yeah, I think you said something like, I have some feelings for you.
You're neat.
You're nice. Well, I don't.
All right.
But I don't want to date, or I don't want to be in a relationship right now. And so I was like, okay.
Yeah. So it kind of went on. We revisited the dating conversation a few times. And so, if we talked about every detail, we would literally be here forever. So I'm like, we did a lot of, like, we just continued hanging out for a while, and we would often, so we both loved to lead worship and play music. So, I had the keys to the church. And so sometimes at night we would go up there. Sometimes other people would join us, or it was just the two of us. And we would just go worship. Yeah, sometimes Kalli.
I third wheeled a lot.
If I was ever like, I feel awkward,
I basically have also
Kalli.
dated Patrick. Yep.
Kalli, I was thinking more like a chaperone, like not dating Patrick.
No,
I chaperoned Lauren. I chaperoned two of our friends in YWAM, but anyway, we're not going to talk about that right now.
Yeah.
I say that because Sweet Patrick would also pay for stuff that he got
true.
stuff for Katie, so he'd get stuff for me too. No,
Very
but
sweet.
What a man! Look at that.
I was 100% the buffer, and I knew that. Yep. Continue. Sorry.
But kind of like the turning point. So this all kept building. But yet I don't know. We just never got to the point of like, let's go on a date. But
it was lots of hangouts and lots of flirting,
and lots of just almost talking about it, but not talking about it, avoiding stuff. Until one time, so we were part of the youth ministry. We were youth leaders, and one of our good friends named Steph, we did this youth dinner, so we all dressed up really nice, and I was sitting next to our good friend Steph, and she's like, hey, like, are you gonna ask Katie out? I was like, oh, no, she doesn't want me to. Or some stupid answer, and she's like, yeah, she's totally into you. And that just clicked in my brain. I just was the encouragement I needed. So literally like a few days later, I was like, hey, after one of our worship times, I was like, hey, do you want to go out to dinner with me? Fully expecting the same awkward and Katie was like on a real date. I'm like, yeah, like on a 100% real date. She's like, absolutely, yes, I would. And so it was Thursday night when I asked her.
Yeah.
And so instead of being like, great, see you tomorrow, I was like, cool, let's go out on a date next Thursday. And I jumped in my car and drove away. And I was like, yes. But like we waited like a whole week.
Yeah, we waited a whole week to go out.
Yeah. Be ready.
And you probably saw each other like multiple times in
between.
Yeah,
probably.
Totally.
Maybe.
What was going through your head at that point, Katie?
I was just grateful that he actually said something. Because we honestly would just we would avoid just the topic so much, but we both knew it was going on. And so that's why I was like, oh, like, is this actually a date? Because we would go out. I mean, we would go out, like grab food together all the time, like friends. But I wanted him to like label like, this is a date, we're going out. So in a way I was like relieved, but I was also kind of like, ooh, this means I need to like figure out what's going on inside of me, and like I need to see if I actually like this guy or not.
Like right away.
Yeah.
Like that night.
The pressure. Yeah.
Before you go on the date, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So then we went on that first date. It was great. It was super fun, super cute.
It was super fun.
And then I think that was like Thursday. And so a few days later on Saturday, I was like, hey, do you want to go on like another little date, go get breakfast? And I was just like, I don't know. I was just in this like, let's just date. Let's go. Let's,
Which that's what you should do.
I guess. Yeah. Well, then like, so Katie comes to breakfast and she's just like not in it. Like
shut down.
I was like, we literally were on a date a few days ago and like there was no wall. We were laughing and I just feel this big wall. And this is really awkward. And did we talk after that?
I think at that point I was like, I'm not ready to be in a relationship with you still. I mean, it's been years at this point. And I think I had a lot of walls up. I had a lot of fear going on in my mind. And it was always the pressure of like, I don't know if I want to marry this man. And like, I mean, literally we haven't even started dating yet. And that was just like constantly in my head. So that was really showing up at that point strong.
Yeah, which was confusing because it's like, well, I'm excited just to get to know you. And let me kind of state, for some odd reason with Katie, I just had this feeling that like Katie was like the girl I wanted. And almost to the point of like, like when people talk about soulmates, I was like, oh, that's that feeling for me. Not saying like soulmate necessary, but like I just had this feeling for her. So even throughout our entire relationship, ups and downs, which we'll get into, I just always had this like, but Katie's the one I want. Like I just really desire Katie. Like, and there's certain attributes I could tell you about her and all that stuff, but like I was like, man, I don't understand. And so even in that, like, because I was always kind of ahead in our relationship, I feel like, embarrassingly.
It was the no teeth. It was the no teeth that got your heart.
The no teeth whistling, her S's killed me.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that would be tough because you fell in love in the awkward phase and she only got better and better.
True.
Oh, she still is. She's such a babe.
What's a guy to do in that situation?
Seriously.
I'm like, how do I get my hands on one of these to announce this podcast episode?
I honestly would love to see a picture of
we
you,
can
Katie.
We can find one of Patrick and Katie in Bible quiz. Wow. And
oh my god,
we did Bible
that
quiz
can be the
together.
promo.
The before and after.
That's
right.
I got the privilege of going through the Christopherson photo albums, and I can't remember like what the order was, but like I went through Patrick and Katie's wedding album, and Katie is like stunning. Like I'm like, why wasn't this in Vogue?
A Vogue model.
Yeah.
And then we go back to like middle school, and I was like, wait, what?
Like, is this the transformation?
So wild.
My transformation.
I think Andrea texted Lauren and was like, she was like, Katie is proof. Like, I don't remember. She said like, I can't remember, but it was hilarious what you said about her transformation. So
there's hope for everyone. Yeah.
Anyways, we're digressing, but I want
to
back to Katie and Patrick.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Katie, something like, you know, I know a little bit of the inner details about this
the
story.
depths of my heart.
But I remember like you talk the depths. But I remember you talking about like kind of a thing that you really wrestled with was like this wasn't what you pictured for like your story, for like even like a relationship. Can you kind of talk more about that?
Yeah. So I dealt you know, when you grow up, it's like you're kind of painting the picture of like this perfect human that you're going to end up with, and everyone is like, oh, and like when on your wedding day, and it's just like this like beautiful thing, and it's like write that list out, that every quality you want, which is great, you know. It's like you're putting these things down, and it's like, I don't know, it's a conversation with the Lord that you're like, these are my heart's desires, which is great. But I also, I don't know, I had this absolutely perfect picture in my head, and so anyone that I was like remotely starting to like get an interest in or be in a relationship with, I was like, but it's not like perfectly lined up with this picture that I have. And so so with Patrick, it was like, I think I was really running into that. And it's like, okay, I just like, the reality of meshing the two was like, I don't think that's right, because it's like, I don't know, it's mixing reality with like your act, like your perfect dream as well. And it's just like, how do these mesh? And mine was like butting heads the whole time. And and so in my mind, it was like, well, it must not be it, because it's not like the absolutely perfect picture that I have in my head. When Patrick is like an amazing man, and I actually did have feelings for him, but it was like, but is it, you know, is it perfection? Is it like what God has? Is it like the, like before I even say yes to dating, is it like, do I know I'm going to marry him? And so, yeah, merging reality and my dreams was like a huge struggle for me.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even I think like going back to just talking about what you guys said with the culture of dating you grew up in, like there wasn't one. And so you guys are literally just figuring it out on your own with no real practical tools. And it's in such a high pressure situation for both of you of feeling like, well, we have to know. And like Patrick had this rare thing of being like, oh, I actually think she is the person I'd like to end up with, but Katie didn't. And so it would also feel like a lot of pressure for Katie being like, this guy feels super certain about me, and I don't know how I feel about you. Like, yeah, there's some interest there, but like, are you the man I'm gonna marry? I don't know. So that makes sense to me why it would feel so intense.
Yeah. And Patrick alluded to this earlier, but like, so he was like 100% I'm in, I love you, before we even started dating. And I was like at the point of like, yeah, you're cool. Like, and so one night, like we were just friends at this point, and he almost said like, I love you. And I was like, please don't say that. Like, I am not ready for that. Like I'm just starting to like get interested in you, and like you're scaring the crap out of me by like saying that, which is, you know, it's so sweet, but it's also like, wow, that's really feels very premature. So, you know, it's just like shows you where he was 100%, he was ready like to commit, and I was like, you're cool. So we were just very on opposite sides of the spectrum there.
It's like you just, it feels so much more like you have to be careful with his heart when it's at that level. And, you know, like if you're both casually like, well, let's see what's here, you know, like it's like, oh, we're both kind of, but I think it's like when you care about someone, you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to mess this up, you know?
You want to honor each person and what they're feeling, and I think Katie would even say things like, well, I just don't want you to, I don't want to go too far and you to wind up getting hurt. And I think I'd always respond as like, well, that's my choice. Like I'm in this, and I probably didn't say this, but I felt like I'm in this to get hurt if it happens. You know, that's my choice. And that even that night when because like we were talking about dating again, because we went on a date and then some time had passed because we were just kind of like, well, we're not in a relationship. We might go on some dates and hang out kind of exclusively, but we're not like in a relationship. And then this night we were hanging out and she's like, well, maybe I'll talk to my dad about dating. So I was like, green light, we're dating couple now. And I was just like so full of this moment. I was like, man, I think I really, really like you. And you almost said that. She's like, don't you dare say that word. And I was just so caught up in like, once again, kind of like a heart's desire. But I actually later, I repented to her and said, hey, I'm so sorry. Like that word in that moment was actually more, it worked against us than for us. And I want to take that back because I want to say it to you again. And I don't want you to think about that moment where it was like super insecure, but I want it to mean something more. So I kind of to fast forward, like we went through this for probably like from that first time we had a date, kind of did that
probably
for
about a year or
probably
so.
about a year. Just kind of going back and forth, arguing, but just like discussing, should we do this? Kind of talking Katie off of a ledge, like all this stuff. Till finally, one night, she called me and she's like, I have to figure this out. And it's like let's just give it a try. And we both said this same thing that I think was super impactful. We were both like, man, it feels like there's so much pressure on us. If I date you, I have to marry you. And not saying I don't necessarily want to marry you, but in this moment, I just want to get to know you in that area. I want to date you. I want to see what it's like. Like, can we just date? Like, can we be Christians who date without that pressure? And
love how you dropped that.
Come on.
So smooth.
You were waiting for that moment.
Totally.
They were the original Christians who date.
That's right.
But when we both kind of confessed that and just released that pressure, Katie was like, well, I want to date you. Like, I would like to date you. But like, could you get a blessing from my father to date you? Which I was like, that's kind of heavy. So I did, and that was awesome. And then we became like steady, exclusive, like even Facebook official. That was crazy.
Yeah, back then that was a big deal.
Great.
Oh my gosh, that was a big deal back then.
Very big.
Big deal. Yeah.
Still is. No.
Facebook, what is that?
Yeah.
I love Facebook.
Is anyone on that?
I love Lauren.
She actually does. Yeah.
So then, and we immediately, and throughout that, I think that dating time, we talked pretty intensely about like some boundaries. Like, obviously we both were like, we have to be on the same page with our boundaries. Like, we've never been in a relationship, never been in a physical relationship. And so that is a high boundary for us. And so we talked about that, and then, just started dating and started hanging out with each other more. And then, so that was fun. That was cute. Like, we got to be dating together in the same town. And then a few months later, I got a job opportunity to go to, we live in Helena at that point, to move to Bozeman to be on staff at a church for full time, which that was like long distance. And that was like scary. And so then we had to decide, okay, is this, it was literally like 6 months later. And I was like, dang it. Like, and I prayed a lot about it. I was like, God, like, this is my dream. Like, what the heck? Like, I'm going to move away. Now that's all up in the air. And I don't know. It was just weird. It was a weird season. And I got kind of a theme of our relationship. And I also think of our lives is we tend to go to like our mentors or, even our parents and just be like, we need wisdom. And I went to her parents and just talked about this job opportunity, and both of her parents were just super amazing. It was like, you know what, like, we understand that you're really crazy about Katie, and we love that and we respect you. But this is an opportunity for you to like grow in life and provide for her if that ever becomes a thing, further down. And so yeah, we did the long distance relationship, which
it wasn't, but like, it's not that far away. So you would come down for like weekends and stuff. So it wasn't terrible. And then like, I mean, that fall, so I think we did for like 9 months, we did long distance. And then I moved down to Bozeman. So we were together again for a while.
And so this has been like, at this point, when Katie moved into Bozeman, we've been together for a while, and, and this is where we started getting some people who are like, hey, like, wow, you've been together.
When are you getting married?
When are you going to get married? Like, have you talked about marriage? And I think we talked about it, but it was like, that is not.
I was like, nope.
It's like, you're lucky we date, And so.
Take what you get.
Yeah. But I was so satisfied. And there's just a lot of change with being on staff at a church. I was a youth and worship pastor. And I remember we went out to dinner, and Katie had been talking about going back to ministry school. And I remember going to dinner. We went to this like one place we only went to once, probably for many reasons. But I remember sitting down and we had dinner, and Kate's like, I'm gonna move back to California and go to school. Like,
Yeah, we didn't even talk about it. I just like told him.
Yeah. Katie was just like, boom.
But I was also looking for like, at this point, like we had so much fun dating. It was just like, it was like a great relationship. At the same time, I really sucked at communication. Like it was like a pattern in my life where I would like be like, we're good for a while, and then I'm like, I don't know if I want to marry him. I don't know if I want to marry him. And it would like be this like swirly thing in my head for like a long time. And then all of a sudden I would just like, blah, like just like tell it. I'd be like, we have to talk. I don't know if I want to marry you. I don't even know if I like you. And it was just like this like thing that would come out. And so this would happen. It was just like all the time. And so in the meantime, I was like, you know what, maybe we need a little space too. And I was really wanting to move back to Reading for a bit. Didn't feel like my time there was done. And so I think I was just like, hey, I'm doing this. And so, which is such a bad communication move also. Like we didn't talk about it. I was just like, hey, I think I'm going to do this. But like, we can still date long distance.
Verbatim what she said.
Super fun.
Verbatim. And like, and to like take a little bit of the heat off of Kate, like I would see these patterns of like she would start getting kind of like more kind of pull away a little bit and get a little bit more like closed up, and I wouldn't talk about it. I'd just be like, oh, it must be a bad day for Katie, and then all of a sudden she'd blow up instead of trying to like, because I didn't know communication, I didn't know how to ask her tough questions. I didn't want to ask her tough questions, to be honest. I loved being in a relationship, and I loved our life together. And so that started the next season of like true long distance.
Yeah, that was a bit more intense.
Yeah.
So, I moved to Reading, we were long distance. He would come visit me a bit. And then kind of that following.
I lived there too.
And Kalli. Yeah. In our terrible apartment together.
Sketch.
That's right.
Yeah, so I moved there in the fall, and basically that following spring, we had talked a ton, and at this point, I think we'd been dating over 3 years.
Yeah.
And so, especially as a Christian couple, people are like, "Are you ever getting married? Yeah. If you're not, you're definitely having sex." Like, it's just we weren't.
To be
honest. There's definitely a Christian timeline.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And that's where we started like the anti of like people being like, what's going on? And like, and it was so interesting being separated in that season, because then like Katie would be talking to her people and I'd be talking to my people about our relationship, and we'd come and, like, hey, I'd be getting pressure of like, man, we should get married. Like, what does that look like? Like, how long are you going to be in California? And then she would be getting conversations like, is this the guy you want to be with? Like, should you be with him? Should you continue to string him along?
Yeah. It's like, seems like you really struggle with all of this. Yeah.
And it was like, not that it was bad. It was things we had to think through, but it was definitely like rough at some times, because it's like, then you have this Christian idea, kind of like what y'all said, this timeline of like, well, what's wrong? Like, why isn't this working? And long distance is hard when I can't talk to you every day or every moment. And then going to the Lord and just like trying to get to that vulnerable spot of like, do I give this up? Like, is this worth still being in? And still for me, always kind of coming back to like, yes, I even felt like, just to be honest, I felt foolish sometimes, because like, man, am I holding Katie back? I'm always like the people pleaser, sacrifice person. Like, am I holding you back from year one? But just like asking those questions.
Sweet man.
And then, so through that time when she was in California, I think you were there for 3 years?
No.
Sorry. Can't math.
Well, so we were there for a school year, and that springtime, he had come to visit. It was kind of a blow up that time that he came to visit, because I was just freaking out about us. So then he went home, and we broke up actually over FaceTime, which was like, it was just like gutting. Like, it was awful. Especially for like, we've been dating 3.5 years, and then we break up over FaceTime. Like, it was just like really hard.
And during like, before that, we'd gone on like breaks. Just like would stop communicating and like, kind of ebb and flow. And so it felt like it was kind of coming, because basically we got to the place where it's like, and I don't know, this mindset got in where it's like either we have to get married or we have to break up. That's it. Those are the only options. And we couldn't.
I feel like I've heard this so many times, like with Christians specifically.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. It's like timeline's done. You got to figure it out now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I felt like that every time we would have an anniversary. I was like, I felt sick every time there was an anniversary because I was like, we've been at this for 3 years, or like, oh, we've been at this for 4 years, and I don't have an answer yet. But I really like this guy, and I love hanging out with him. So it was just like, it was really hard. And I also, not to blame it on my personality, but I'm on the Enneagram, I'm a 4, and Patrick hates the Enneagram. But so I'm like, I'm a 4, which is individualist, and it's just like, I love to go against the grain. I don't like to do things that people like, assume are good for me or expect from me. Yeah. And so everyone here, we live in such like a small community, was like, oh, well, you're going to get married and this is perfect. And I was like, I'm going to prove them wrong. Like, I'm not going to, like, this is not going to happen. Even though I was like, I love him.
She told me that many times.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, Kalli was I was like, oh, I have to tell you.
And I, along the journey, I don't know, I didn't have that same issue of like anniversaries and stuff. I almost had it like, oh, look, we made it this far. Like, look how much we've grown. And I think that's just like, I'm a hopeless romantic. And so I think that's just that hope side of me is like, oh, look how closer we've gotten the last year. Like, we've survived this long. That's amazing. And I just didn't have this, I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't know what dating was supposed to be like, whatever. I just didn't have this expectation. Like, I had a desire to be married, but I also had the desire for Katie to be ready. I try to force it, be like, we need to get married. Like, I was talking to my people and this is what they said, and like just not being patient with the process.
Yeah.
So then we broke up.
Yeah, so we broke up.
It sucked.
If you guys have any questions in the meantime too, feel free. We're just talking.
No,
this is great.
This is great. Keep going. I'm in it. My heart is wrenched. I'm sad.
Yeah. Lauren's like, will they? Won't they? I don't know what happened.
I'm like, what happened, people?
Cliffhanger.
On the edge of her seat.
Yeah. So then we broke up. That whole, we were broken up for 9 months.
And during that process, like, just speaking for myself, it's funny, like, things you're like, oh, I hated that season, but yeah, I needed that season because
me too.
I needed to break off like just this imagery of who I thought Katie was and how I kind of positioned my whole life to chase after Katie, and how if we got married with that, I would have failed. Like, our marriage would have been terrible. And I remember I was just so gutted after we like broke up, and I was like, obviously everybody around me, I had a great support system, and they were like, oh, it's okay, like, we're so sorry for you. But I remember just like processing with the Lord, like, God, like, what the heck? And I just felt like he's like, I'm gonna do something through this. I just felt like he was gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna do something through this. Which I was like, well, you better, because this sucks. And even like one morning I was just waking up, and like, early in the morning when you're kind of in like the dream phase, I remember just like I was just about to wake up, and I saw this picture of my life, and like it was this beautiful picture of just like the journey of my life, and like from that point on, and it was like inlaid with like Katie's name and just like fun dreams and stuff like that, and in a moment just like broke and just blew up. And the moment it blew up, I just jumped up, started crying. And like, I felt like the Lord is like, I have to like take away false things to give you your true desires. I have to take away like things that you try to create in your own strength that I'm going to create. And I had no idea what that meant. And it began this huge healing process for me. Even to the place I went to like a mission trip, like a few months later. Katie and I were not talking at all, but I was just so like addicted to her. So I went on this mission trip,
like in an unhealthy way,
like in a very unhealthy way.
Yeah.
And even to the point, so I went to this mission trip, and we had not spoken for like a while. Like, we just stopped speaking. Katie had cut her hair, which was like super, like, I don't know.
It's like, I'm going to show you.
Yeah. I felt so cut by that. Like, it was interesting how I was holding on so hard. And I even bought her same hairspray that she would use because I love that smell. And so I was on this mission trip, and the missionaries were like, "Hey, we just really want to pray for you." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. Like, end of the mission trip, let's just blast you with the Holy Spirit. Let's pray for you." And they're like, and the missionary, she was like, "Yeah, we want to pray for you, and you probably should have a buddy." I was like, "What the heck does that mean? Like a buddy?" And so, yeah, we'll get heated, it was intense. And so I remember they took me to like, we're in the middle of Kosovo. It's this beautiful like evening, and they just were like, "We just see this picture of like, there's an idol in your life, and it's Katie." And I was like, "Don't you dare go there," And they're like, if you trust us, we just like to break that because we feel like the Lord has something for you." And I was like, "Let's go." And it was just like, I just felt like I was this kind of unholy like connection, unholy soul tie was created with Katie. And I was just like, it was so intense, but yet it was so healing because I put so much of my identity in her, and so much of everything, my hopes and dreams was like in Katie, that the Lord is like, there's not much space for him. And he wanted to be my center. He wanted to be everything. And so it was so healing and so good. But it was really hard. It was really, really hard.
Yeah. And then, so like my perspective, like right after we broke up, pretty shortly after, I actually started like kind of hanging out with another guy. And I was like, I'm fine. I don't know like what's going on, but like obviously like I missed Patrick. I was sad, but I was like, totally fine. Wow, weird. Like hung out with this guy for a couple months, and then I think we broke up in May. So like probably like August, September, all of a sudden I remember I was in Old Navy. Shout out to Andrea.
I might have been working. Who knows?
That. We love.
I was in Old Navy trying on clothes, and I busted out crying, and I was just like a hot mess in there, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Like I was just like overcome with grief, like so ripped up inside. And so I met up with my mentor at the time, and I'm just like telling her, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just like so gutted by this relationship, and like I was totally fine. And she was like, grief doesn't make sense. And it's like when you break a mirror or a picture and you're like trying to put the pieces back together, and it's like they don't make sense how they come or go, or like what size they are, but they just show up in different ways. And so just realized I was like hardcore grieving. And so stopped hanging out with that guy. And I was like, I just need time to myself. And so we actually hung out. I came back home for something in the summer, and Patrick and I hung out for a little. Because I was buying a car, and so I actually I like bought a car here in Helena, and I wanted to go see one of my best friends in Bozeman, where Patrick lived. And I was like, should I say that I'm in town? I don't know. And I was like, why not? Like, and so I was also learning how to. I bought a stick shift car, and I was like, I don't know how to drive stick, and so I like limped over there. And so I was like texting him. I was like, hey, maybe we should hang out later, and you could like teach me how to drive stick. And I was just like, oh, I'm probably being an idiot. Like, I'm just like opening the store again. But right before we hung out, I remember I was hanging out at a coffee shop, and I was just journaling, and I was like, God, I don't know what to do. Like, I do still have feelings for Patrick, but I felt very strongly like it was time for us to break up. And I just remember like kind of having this like crazy vision. I don't know, just like word from the Lord that I saw myself like, and this was the thing that I'd prayed for like for years and years, because I was always like, God, show me that Patrick is the one, and he would never show me. But that was the whole thing of like, learning to like be in a relationship with the Lord even deeper, and like he so honors our choice, and I feel like he gives us so many of like the best, and like we get to pick one of those, because we grew up and it's like, oh, this is the one person, but it's like, no, it's like you get to choose the one that you want. And so anyways, when I was at this coffee shop, I remember like I saw myself like kind of like walking down the aisle, and it was like Patrick at the end. And I was like, what the heck? And I don't fully remember it. I wrote it down, but it was the clearest thing. But I felt like I still wasn't supposed to date him for a while. I was like, I still need time. And I really felt like the Lord was like, you need till the end of the year at least to be single. Like, don't date Patrick. But like, if you want him, like, I will really bless this marriage. And like so much relief just like came over me because I needed something from the Lord so intensely. So anyways, we hung out. You taught me how to drive stick, and
yeah.
It's probably super awkward.
And we hung out. Yeah, it was interesting. Just like it was such a weird thing because I missed her so much, but yet there was like obviously a wall there of like we're not in a relationship anymore. And this is where I always like to pause and be like,
give a disclaimer.
There's a disclaimer of like, this is our story. Because we've shared this story like small bits with other people, and immediately they're full of hope and like, I'm broken up in my relationship. This is what I needed to get back together.
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
Or it gives all the creepers like so much hope that like, oh, I can just keep going and keep liking this person forever.
And I think I was trying to think about earlier how to say this gently, but I think Katie and I, we like, I don't know, this is our story, and not to like mislead people who might be in a thing like this, but like we at this season we just gave everything to the Lord. We're just like, God, everything's yours. You know, if
you're surrendered.
Best advice.
Yeah.
And I think if you're fully surrendered, and then the Lord's like, you know, like I give you a little bit more, like cool. But if you're fully surrendered and the Lord's like, nope, don't be like, well, I heard Patrick and Katie say this, so like, here we go. I just, you know, I think that's just a good thing to know, because, man, like we were both at the place where it's like, God, this is yours. Like, I really care for this person. Like, I love this person. And it's just the season wasn't right, or something's not quite there. And I remember we had hung out a little bit in Bozeman, and then, you know, all our families back in Helena, so we hung out a bit more in Helena. And before she left, I think I gave her, I'm a gift person to Kate. I give her tons of stuff. And I gave her something, and she was like, oh, why are you doing this? Like, and like kind of like this, I miss this. And I was like, I just need to know, like, is there like a chance? And I don't know. I just like, did I say something like that?
Something like that.
Something like that. And I think all she said is like, I'm not going to say like yes or no to you. Like, I'm not going to say yes. But what I am going to say is, I know I need to be single until the end of the year. And she's like, that's all I can say. And I was like, so you're saying there's a chance? You know, I
was gonna say that.
I love that.
And then, so I don't know. So then we
would FaceTime a bit, like because I went back to Reading, and like maybe once a month we would just kind of like have a quick chat and do that thing. But then as like the 6-month mark was like coming to an end, I really felt a stirring in my spirit to be like, I really want to like date Patrick again. And so
we were she was coming back around the like Thanksgiving holiday, and been hanging out for Christmas, and we were going to see each other because we were going to do some music again for like a church. And before she came, I was like, God, like I need some clarity here. I need to know if I need to shut the door on my heart and just be like, girl, like I'm done. Or like, what are the parameters? What do I need in order to like, not to like, because I was kind of at the place, it's like, I think I need to be like we need to not just continue to date forever. Like, so I felt like the Lord in that moment gave me like a couple of things. She's like, okay, Patrick, like here's a test for Katie, if you will. Like, she needs to move back to like Bozeman for your relationship to continue. Like, okay, that's fair. She needs to tell you again that she loves you. And I was like, okay, that's fair. And be open to like marriage. And I was like, these are intense. And I was just journaling, and I was like, okay, like, and once again, I was like, is this me? Is this God? Like I was like, okay, like those are my 3 parameters. And I felt like the Lord is like, you can ask her these questions and see what happens, or you can just let it go. I was like, ugh. And so we went to coffee, and Katie basically just confessed. She's like, you know what, I still have feelings for you. And I was like trying to like just keep it together and just be like as cool as can be. And so I was like, okay, can I ask you a couple questions? And she's like, absolutely. And I was like, in order to work, I think you need to move back to Bozeman so we can be together. And she's like, I was already thinking about moving back to Bozeman. I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I was like, okay, like I was like, Katie, I'm just gonna be intense with you. Do you even love me? And I just straight up asked her, and she's like, I do love you. I was like, what's happening? That's right. And then I was like, okay, like if you love me, if you want to move back to Bozeman to be with me, like marriage needs to be on the table. Like I don't want to just date. I want to marry you. And she was like, I was thinking the same thing. Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah. And I had a few things too. And so there was a few things that I was like, hey, these are a few things I've had issues with in the past. Like, so we just like hashed some stuff out and it was really good. So that was like in November. And then I was like, let's take the next month. I have to go back to Reading for the whatever. And then I'll be back for Christmas. So we really prayed about it, talked to a lot of people, and then
we felt like we really needed just to seek wisdom, like, individually, and so like go to our friends and our family, like I think we had like a tier systems, like we need to go to some friends, we need to go to family, but we also need to go to our leaders and be like, what do you think of that? And that was something like I was able to go back to my family, because that's one thing like I didn't do super well, was like be present with my family while dating Katie sometimes, especially with like my brothers. And so that was a season where I was able to bring them back in and be like, I need you to be a part of this. Like I need your wisdom, even if because they walked through it, they saw everything with me. And so if like, you know, if you guys can support this is what we're going to do basically. Do you want to share some of those things that you shared too? I think they're kind of powerful. Like during that coffee time, like some issues.
Yeah, some things that I was like, you know, I really struggle with. I did at the time, you know, I struggled with attraction to Patrick sometimes, and I was like, I don't know if I can like marry you when I struggle with this. And he was just like such a classic guy. He was like, okay, like I was like, if someone said that to me, I would be like so gutted. But he was like, whatever, like not a big deal. And then
which is an attractive quality if we're being honest.
That's true. Very true.
100%. Like he's like, I know I'm hot.
Yeah, so please. You don't love this. And then I also had like just a lot of unknowns with his family as well, that I was like, I'm not sure, you know, I'm gonna be related and I just don't know. Like I just had a lot of questions with that too. And so anyways, we worked through a lot of that stuff. And so then like, you know, we came back the following month and
through that time we still had conversations.
We did,
we're kind of up and down and unknown and things like that.
But we got together and we were like, let's just worship for a little bit, because that's always kind of been our go-to of like kind of ground zero for us. Like let's worship together.
Let's bring the Lord into it.
Yeah. So we worshiped for a bit. I have that set like recorded on my phone.
Oh, do you?
I do. And so
and we're gonna play it right now.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, ready, guys?
Just lift up your hands and worship right now.
Steve. We're like a soaking session.
Yeah.
Oh my god. But you know, after that we just talked and decided that we wanted to give this a go again, but really with the intent of like, okay, we both love each other. Like we really are looking at marriage now without, you know, just like randomly dating, because I feel like that was our first stint. We were just randomly dating. Yeah.
But basically just get on the same page.
Yeah.
Like fully communicating and like not holding, like we're at the place where we're not holding like punches back. We're not holding anything back. Like
I'm not afraid of hurting your feelings. Yeah, I'm just gonna like lay it out here.
And it was really cool because I think we both were like, I was so like during our dating time, I was so like attached to Katie. Like I was so not independent. I think I even said like, Katie, you're so independent. I'm so dependent upon you. And like kind of red flags, you know, like that's probably not great in that time.
Yeah, girls don't like that.
Traction down, but during that time we started like being very like independent, like this is what I'd like to see for us, like this is what I want us to do, and these are my hope and dreams for us, and inviting each other into like, do you want to be part of that story? And so even for like the next few months we continued conversation.
Yeah. So we dated till Patrick came out and visited me again. I was back in Reading. We dated till May, and then you came out to visit, and I was just in a cyclical, just like intense fear of like, I still don't know, like in my heart, I was like, I still don't know if this is the man I want to marry. And so we had a big blow up that time he came to visit, and I was just like, we're probably done again. This sucks. And like, after that, I was talking to my mentor. The time he was there, I was on the phone with her, just like crying. I was like almost having a panic attack that day because I was still in that struggle of like, I love him, but I don't know if he's the one, that thing that's like ingrained in our little Christian minds when we were such a kid, that like, you'll know that he's the one. And that's great when people do know, but I didn't. And so, I was just coming up against that so hard, and like so many fears of things were coming up. So yeah, I was on the phone with my mentor, and I was like, I just don't know if I want to marry him. And like Patrick was leaving that night, and so I felt like I had to like figure things out that night. And she was like, Katie, like, you don't have to figure this out right now. And it, for some reason, it blew my mind. I was like, yes, I do. Like, you don't realize like the pressure that has like been put on us. And she's like, there's no pressure. Like, you don't need to figure this out right now. She's like, actually, it's probably better if you don't. Like, you're in a really bad place. So I was like, thank you for the honesty.
That's amazing.
I love that.
So Patrick ended up like going back, and then we were still just chatting on the phone. About a month later, I was like, you know what, we just need to see each other again. So we ended up like going camping in the middle of nowhere. We were going camping.
Sketchville.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about like, what would it look like if we got married and stuff. And at that point, you had talked to my dad and you told me that.
Yeah. And so I was like, we're getting there. Like it's either this is the moment where it's either we're going to get married and I have to be kind of the guy that leads it, or we're just going to break up and like,
be done forever.
And so before we went on this trip, I pulled her dad aside. I took him to his favorite place, Mackenzie River.
Nice.
We just had
classic guy, Norm.
Classic Norm.
We just had a really good conversation, and I was like, Norm, I don't know if your daughter is going to say yes to my proposal, but I would like to know if I have your blessing. And I'm sorry that seems weird. And the only way like Norm, Pastor Norm, the father of all fathers, could reply. He just blessed me, and he's just like, Cortland and I really admire you and love you, and I think it was kind of I don't remember everything, but I felt like like, we don't know either, so good luck. Like,
go try.
If anyone can at this point, it's probably you.
Didn't you ask Kalli?
Oh my gosh.
Didn't you ask Kalli too? Like,
that was later.
Okay.
I'll get to
Kalli.
that.
Okay, at one point.
Sorry.
Oh my god.
At one point, I was like, Kalli, can you see me marrying Patrick? And she was like, no.
Yeah, super cool.
It's true.
Do we need to talk about this right now?
Maybe. This is also Kalli.
We can talk about it.
This is Kalli also. When Katie and I, we had kind of like prior to all this, we had like a little break. We weren't communicating, and I was so like sad that Kalli invited me over to watch a movie, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so like just super sweet." And then she calls Katie, and she's like, "Oh, I'm hanging out with Patrick," and I was like, but I was just like, it was so pathetic. And I was
why
like,
did you invite Patrick over? Because you felt bad for him?
I actually don't really remember.
I don't either.
To be honest,
I just had to say that. I don't know why.
My mind is my mind is blown already that like Kalli didn't approve you. Katie and you guys are like some of my favorite like married couple. I don't know. I just think you're so great. So I'm like shooketh.
I can give my 2 cents, but it's not about me. So
tell us, Cal.
I was Katie's like confidant. I was like her one, like she told me everything she processed, everything she's thinking and feeling. So I'm getting all of Katie's like doubts, fears, insecurities. And when they broke up, I was like, this is really good for you guys because
it was really, so up and down.
It was so up and down. I was like, you don't even know what life is like without each other. So I'm like, maybe you break up and you're like, ooh, I want to get back together. Or maybe you break up and you're like, that was the right call. Yeah. So I was very much like, I was like over there, like, we don't know what's going on. I'm like, I think you guys just need to take a break and then see what happens. And so when Katie asked me, if I could see it happening, I was like, based on what I've seen so far, I can't, because it was just like, just such a swirl all the time. So, but anyways, there was obviously more to the story. So anyways, that was me.
Okay, that's fair, Cal. That's fair. Thank you for that 2 cents. I feel better now.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
That makes sense timeline-wise in the story that you would feel that way.
And also just, I'm a little like Katie in the fact that I like to spite people and prove them wrong too. So a lot of people were like, oh, they're totally going to get married. And I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah, right.
Because Katie had also been like just that edge to her. So I was like, all right, like apparently, not. So anyway.
Kalli loves an edge, you know.
That's true.
I do.
She does.
Her banks.
Yes.
Her banks.
Love an edge.
She loves an edge.
Anyways.
Yeah, and like kind of even feed into that, like, you know, it's so interesting, long distance, and like when you're in a dating relationship, you obviously, like, I had my tribe, Katie had her tribe, we had people that intermingle. But you know, you those people that are in your side are often like tickling your ear with like what you want to hear. And it's so, I think it's so good to have people who are like, I had a handful of people who are like, well, should you just break up? And I was like, how dare you? You know, because that's not what I wanted to hear. And I would often go, when I brought my brothers back into it, I'd often go to like my brothers who were just full of wisdom, and they would challenge me on certain things. And I remember one time my oldest brother, he was like, so this whole thing, she doesn't have peace with you, help me understand that. And I tried, and he's like, do you realize like if you marry her, like that doesn't just go away? And so he helped me like weigh these options of like, oh, okay. And even like I had certain leaders in my life who were really close to like our families. And one time at church, this one gal came up to me and she was like, I just can't believe like Katie's taking her time and like leading you along, and not like you're just amazing. She just should say yes and marry you. And it was the first time in my life that this like justice thing rose up out of me. I was like, honestly, like this is between Katie and I, and if it takes Katie like however long it is for her to figure out that she's 100% in this with me, I'm willing to wait. And that's on me. That's my time. And it was just like this, like, no, I don't want you to speak that into my life. I don't want to just be like, yeah, totally. Like I need to like, if I truly love this woman, I need to not just defend her later, but defend her like even if she's making choices that are hard for me. I think we both need to get there for sure.
Yeah.
And not to hide behind like, yeah, everybody's on my side. Be like, well, actually, there's two separate hearts, two hearts that are full of dreams and full of future that are trying to figure out if they can do this together. And yeah, I could tell you so many reasons why I think totally, but that doesn't mean that's what is in Katie's heart. And I in order for this to work and be beautiful, I need to know that Katie like has that all figured out as well.
Yeah. So anyways, kind of back to her. So we were on this camping trip. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, sorry.
It was good.
Yeah, that was great. That was amazing.
But yeah, he told me when we were like sitting in a hammock, and he's like, so I asked your dad if I could marry you. And I was like, ooh. Like it really scared me. But honestly, these pushes it's like what I needed. Otherwise, I mean, I would have, because I would tell people, I was like, I could I could date Patrick forever, but could I marry him? I don't know.
She would say that to me. It's like, I could date you forever. It's like, well, then what? There's no difference. It's just a bit more fun.
So good. So good.
Amazing.
Sleepovers.
Yeah,
literally.
Sleepovers. Yeah, so he kind of left. We left on that note of like, he just was like, "Hey, I passed your dad," and I was like, "Oh dear Lord!" Like it's all coming to a point, and I knew it, but I just felt like I was like, I need to keep going in this, like, and just trusting the process, trusting the Lord in it. And in the meantime, like I feel like I was in the place I needed to be. I was around the people, like Patrick said, like around the people I needed to be around, and just like I was growing so much in my like communication, just like knowing myself a lot more, and just like emotional intelligence. Like before, I just absolutely knew nothing, and like so we were both in a good spot. And so that July, that summer, I came home for just our family camp. You know, us Christoffersons.
That's right.
Oh yeah, we know about family camp.
Dedicated.
So,
yeah.
Every time, like, we always hang out at family camp, and I always head up, and so I just had it in my mind, like, I think I'm just gonna ask Katie to marry me. Just do it. And so,
even with me being so like up and down, like, oh,
and it's like it was such a rut. Like I had this, I don't know, I wish I could remember like that moment where I was like, I'm doing this, I'm just gonna do it. I can't. But I just remember like it was probably a week prior. I guess I'd been looking for rings. We never went ring shopping together, but I had
I wouldn't even tell him what I liked because I was so scared. Like I was like, no, I'm not even going to show you a picture because I don't want you to go buy anything. Like,
I helped him.
I think one time Naomi was like, hey, just in case Katie really likes the idea of being proposed to on a bridge. And so I tried bringing that up to Katie, and she's like, "That no, what? Oh, what? Like just like wall." Okay.
Hate bridges. Please.
I hate bridges.
Dude. Yeah. So I remember like I went to like every jewelry or every ring store in Bozeman where I was at, and I was overwhelmed. Like obviously I'm a minister of the gospel, so I don't make a lot of money, and so I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I found like a few rings that are like, okay, these seem cool. And I found one that was super unique. And I was like, I love that one, but it doesn't seem like the normal ring. And so I texted some to our really good friend, Kalli, and like the one I was like, what do you think of this one that I really like? She's like, oh, I don't like that one at all. Like, dang it. But then I think I texted to Kalli, and Kalli, I think you were like, oh, I like that one a lot.
I told you which one I liked, and I think you went for it. So
yes.
Sorry if Kalli hates that ring.
That's fine.
She hates my wedding ring.
Yeah. Wow. Wait, what a jerk.
They had it ready the day before I left for family camp.
Yeah.
Like I literally, actually, no, I'm sorry. The day I left, like I had to pick it up as I was leaving. I was like, okay, so step one, I got the ring. So now we'll see what happens. And I just went with the intention I was going to ask her. Like
he was planning with Kalli the whole time.
Yeah.
And I could feel it coming. I didn't know, but I could, like, I felt something, you know, the movement of the spirit. I was like, I feel like he's going to propose. And I'm just like, I just was still like, oh, I don't know. And it was still that like thing that I was struggling with. Yeah. And so that morning we led worship for something. Or even like the day before, Kalli was like, do you want to paint your nails or something? I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, because like, I don't want to give into anything that I feel like it's like, want to be ready for a proposal or anything. And so that morning we led worship, and I was just like in my head again. And I was like, we went back to the place where Patrick was staying, and we were just talking, and I was like, I feel like you're going to propose today. And he was like, what are you talking about? Cause we were supposed to go on a date that night. And I was like, if you propose to me today, I will say no. And he was just like,
oh my gosh.
Okay. he's so cool, chill. Just like he's like, but then he said, "Katie, I promise I'm not gonna propose to you." You did.
Did I say
You
promise?
did.
I don't know.
You said that. So, anyways,
but then he calls me.
Alyssa, yeah, calls Kalli.
Yeah, so then I called Kalli and be like, "What do I do?" Because like I was like, "All right, like cool, like well let's go get ready for our date." And I was like, "Are you gonna dress up?" And Katie was still like, "No." I was like, "Well, don't you want to like we're gonna go on a nice date? We're gonna go a really fun restaurant." And she's like, "Are you dressing up?" And just this bickering of like, "Are you gonna dress up?" And I was like, "I'm gonna try to look nice." So Katie left, and I was like, so I called Kalli. I was like, "Kalli, like, here's what's going on. I have the ring. I want to propose to her like right now. I need to do this, but I'm freaking out. Like, what do I do?" Kalli, I don't know if you remember this, but what I remembered you said is like, "Patrick, you just need to go with your gut. Like, if you feel like you need to do it, you need to go with it." And that's all I needed. I was like, "Cool. Feel like I'm gonna throw up, but I'm gonna do this." And so then we kind of arranged. Kalli was like, "I can help you like arrange like if you take her to dinner and then bring her back here, I can like get you like set up like one of our like friends' cabins to make it really romantic if you want to propose there or however it looked like." Because I was like,
"Oh, Kalli, coming with
the
moves."
Kalli is so good.
She's so good at this.
The ambiance.
That's right.
Let's just swivel chair right now.
I'm out for hire, people.
Whoever marries me, ask Kalli to set up the ambiance, please.
Yeah, I got you.
Yes.
And plus it was just like I don't know. It was at this point it was really cool, kind of looking back to like have my relationship with Kalli where I could just be like, "Hey," like, and Kalli was straight up. She wasn't gonna be like, "Oh, you should just do it," and be like secretly be like, "Oh, she is gonna work," And so it was just so nice to have that and just like have that sounding board. And so we went to Glacier National Park, to the lodge, this beautiful thing. And I remember we were sitting at dinner. And at that point, I was like, when driving there, things started to settle down. I think Katie started to get relaxed.
It's like, okay, we're just hanging out.
And at first,
he's not going to propose.
At first, I was like, I don't think I'm going to propose. Like, I driving there, I was like, I'm going to do it. And then I was like, I don't want to ruin this vibe. This is great. And we were in the middle of dinner. And there was something we talked about that all of a sudden everything just shifted, and it was like Katie's walls came down, we were laughing, we were having a really good time, and I was like, "Excuse me, I need to go use the restroom." And I walked all the way to I ran to our car real quick, and I grabbed the ring and I put it in my pocket. I was like, "I'm gonna do it tonight." And so ran back to the restaurant, and we finished off our beautiful little meal. And then I was like, "Hey, do you want to just go for a walk?" And she's like, "Sure." And so we go for a walk in where this lodge is. There's like some beachfront where you can go and just look over.
In the meantime, we were like, we were looking at the like the view, and I heard him just whispering, like he was speaking in tongues. I was
praying a lot.
I was like,
oh, precious.
Is he praying right now? I'm like, why is he praying? And it was very quiet, and I didn't say anything, and I was just like, oh. Just loves the Lord, He's so sweet.
And so I lead her down. We walked down to this like kind of beachfront. It was just gorgeous, and like it was like cloudy and sunny and everything you'd hope for, a Kodak moment or whatever. And did I put on music?
Yeah, you put on music.
Yeah, and so I put on music, kind of like a fun album we've been listening to. We were sitting here like on a log or something like that, and and I was like, it was a sweet moment, and I was like, "Katie, I have to confess to you, I've been lying to you all day." And she was like, "What?" And so then I grabbed the ring out of my pocket, and she was sitting on the log, and I slipped down, and I was like, "Katie, I adore you, I love you, I can't live life without you." Probably some other things, and I was like, will you do me the honor of marrying me?
And when he said, "I've been lying to you all day," and he was reaching for the ring, my heart literally, like, I was like, I just felt like someone had like kicked me in the face. And I didn't feel like betrayed by him or anything, but it was that thing of like, I have to make a decision now. Like it's either this or it's not. Like I can't play this game anymore. And so I was just like, no, you haven't. Like, oh my gosh. And I started freaking out again. I would love to say I like, I was like, yes, how everyone does it. And it's just this beautiful thing. But we literally, I sat there. We both sat there for about 45 minutes. And I couldn't give an answer. Like, I was just like, I was in my head. I'm very much of an internal processor. And so I was just in there, and every fear was going through my head. Every thought that I've ever had was just like going through it. But then, about 40 minutes later.
And like part of it too was like, I asked her, she was just like, what? And so we were kind of having this like light dialogue. And then like we were on the beach, and then like a couple would come out to take a photo.
Yeah.
And so we're like,
people around.
Speak, like just da, 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 da. And then 15 minutes later, another random couple would like walk just through the beach.
And you guys are like, it's cool.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm just trying to figure out my entire life right now.
I was just like,
so like, no big deal. No pressure.
I was like, so like giddy that I like, we're at this moment that I was like, you should just try on the ring.
Yeah, do you want to hold it? And I was like, ugh, no. Like, but I think I was just, it was sweet. Like, as I look back on it, like Patrick's patience, once again, was just incredible throughout our journey, and even through our proposal. Like, I don't know, he just like sat with me, and he's kind of like, what you thinking? Like, let's talk about it. And like, he has held my hand through learning how to communicate this whole time.
If I could say, like, if during our relationship, if I would have known this one thing, if I would have known that like it is a process to draw things out of Katie, and it's like a fine tuning. You can't like maul her with questions. You have to like ask good questions and give her space to think about it and speak. Like if you're like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? She just shuts down. And so I had to learn. I wish I would have known back then, like Katie's internal processing. So give her a question, let her have time to speak. She needs to learn how to speak more. I'm an external processor. I need to learn how to shut up and let her speak.
Yeah. So I knew, I was just sitting there, and I was like, I feel like I'm about to leap off of a cliff. Like literally, like that's the feeling I had. I was like, if I say no, like literally that's how it felt. Yeah, it's nothing I was like, if I walk away from this, like I will be gutted. Like I will be so like sad, and like I love him so much. Like, and so I was like thinking about that, and then I thought these words came to my mind that I'd had an amazing counseling session with a guy in Reading. He's just incredible. And we were talking about relationships during that counseling session. And he was like, you know what, Katie? He's like, I think you need to start leaping without looking. And that phrase just like, I was like, oh my gosh. And he just, because I was always such a safe decision maker. And he's like, you need to start making decisions that are almost kind of like, not reckless, but just like, you just need to start taking risks in life. And so as I was sitting there, I was like, I need to start leaping without looking. And it just like kind of like went through my head, and I was like, I love him. Like, I feel like I have like God's blessing in this. And so I just like looked at him, and I was like,
you said, I think this is what she said. I'm going to take a huge risk.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, I'm going to take a huge risk right now. And I was like, yes, I'll marry you.
And I freaked the freak out.
And everyone celebrated.
And even like a few weeks prior to that, like kind of coming back to like the fears that were hitting her head, a few weeks prior to that, we had like a pretty long conversation on the phone where she just brought up every single fear, and I was able to answer it, or like just help her like find resolution with it. Like help, like, you like, here's a fear that we never talked about. It's like, okay, like let's talk about it, and I did it. I had so much peace during that conversation. So even when I proposed and she was sitting there and it was like 45 minutes, I just was like, this is my moment to be with the girl of my dreams. Like, what? There's no rush here. And I think that really finally broke this imagery, this mold of what we see in television or like read about. Like, it was a perfect yes, and they were whatever. But it was just like, this is our story.
Yeah.
Like, this is our moment. And if it takes you 45 minutes, if it takes you an hour, like, we're just going to sit here because we're surrounded by beauty. We're surrounded by like this means something to us. And so why rush it? And so I had I don't know, once again, coming back to like that gut feeling, I just had this peace in me. I had this like, she's the one and she'll get it. Like, I don't know, that's not the right word I want to say, but like take your time.
Yeah.
Like, take your time.
And I mean, it like obviously ended out great for us. It's funny because I wouldn't, if someone else was like really struggling with this and like getting to the point of almost marriage, I would probably be like, yeah, you need to break up. Because like, I don't know, there's just like, it seems like there's a lot going on, but like, I don't know, something inside of me needed to like take a risk and make that decision. You know, we got engaged. It was like super exciting. I had to go back to Reading for a bit after that. And I remember like, I was like, you know, I was like, I feel good about this. Like everything, you know, it takes a while for your brain to like catch up with what's going on. But I had this moment that I was like, God, I'm choosing this. I love him. But I really want like your yes on this as well. Like really, really like, I don't know, like very blatant. I need your yes on this. I was like, if anyone would give me a word or anything, I know you're not supposed to like prophesy like dates, mates, and babies and all that stuff. But I was like, God, I need, like, I love you so much that I'm so desperate for just like a stamp of approval on this. And so I used to work at the coffee shop at the church that we went to in Reading, and
Hebrews,
shout out.
Come on.
This guy that was like a regular there, he's like kind of a middle-aged guy. His name was Patrick. He came up one morning and he was like, hey, this is super random, but like, and you know, I'm just like making coffee, hanging out. He's like, it's so random. I thought of you this morning when I was like brushing my teeth. And you know, we've chatted like a handful of times. And he's like, I heard so intensely. He's like, I know I'm not supposed to say this kind of stuff, but he's like, are you dating someone? And I was like, yeah, I'm actually engaged. Like, I was fresh. I was like showing him the ring and stuff. He's like, oh, good. He's like, I just heard like it's time for Katie to get married. And when he said that, I just like everything in my heart just was like, whew, like this, like just like feeling of peace came over me. And I was like, that's like the Lord's approval on this. And so I feel like after that, like it was what I needed. It was like, it was me making the decision, but also the Lord being like, hey, I approve of this. So simple. It was just like, I needed those two things to go hand in hand. So yeah. So that's kind of like, you know, the dating story an hour and a half later.
Oh man. Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, we just crossed so many Mackenzie rivers, you know.
Tim said this is the podcast to rival Rogan, so we're really doing that right now.
We're doing it.
That's good.
100%.
We're on our way to a Rogan podcast right now. They're like 3 hours long.
Door.
Knocking it down.
But it's perfect. Yeah. No, it's perfect.
I'm in it. I'm like picking up so many good things from my own story and like
me
others.
Too. No. Yes. Okay, so I have like so many questions.
Please. It's gonna be a 3-parter.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I've only seen people talking about this more in the last year or so. But like all of a sudden it was like people started talking about relationship anxiety. And I'm like, where was that for Katie?
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago. Have you seen anything on that? Like, are you like, oh my gosh, this was me?
I don't think I have seen anything on that really. But I'm like,
okay.
Yeah.
I think it's like hard sometimes, especially with anxiety, because like then people put it in the pool of like, oh, you have anxiety. You just deal with anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think relationship anxiety is like,
yeah.
You know, it's,
especially
like upbringing backgrounds in the Christian world. Like there's this like,
yeah.
we both came like Katie's older brother, my older brothers. They were like, I guess they dated their one person they were super serious with and they got married. And so that's like your mindset. And,
yeah.
That's what we hear more.
Yeah.
It's like the stakes are already high because you're making a lifetime commitment, and then the Christian world makes them like even higher. And it's like, it's basically like the perfect recipe for like if you deal with anxiety at all, it's like,
100%.
let's throw some fuel on that fire.
Yeah. Because you're bringing God into it, where you're like, I'm called ultimately for God and this mission for God. And if I marry the wrong person, then I'm not going to follow God to the fullness. Or like, it's so much,
Screwing up
it's
my
so
life.
weighty because it's supposed to be this ministry together with your teammate and this godly family, you know. So there's just a lot of pressure that's put on it, and I feel like you guys definitely had to deal with that in different ways.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I've just heard just heard a lot more people like talking, like just having the same experience as Katie. So it's just like a real thing that's out there, and I'm glad people are talking about it more. But yeah. So I guess my second question is, now that you're on the other side, you guys said you've been married for 7 years, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. 7 years later, like looking back at that Katie who was like, man, should I do this? Like, I don't know. Like, what would you tell her?
Oh, man. I think just to like the main thing is just to like take the pressure off. Because I mean, from like day one when we were just friends, I was like trying to figure it out. And like literally, I just, I feel like we had so much fun dating, but I feel like I sucked the fun out of a lot of it because I was so serious about it. And just to kind of let people's opinions to just go, because we had a lot of people having a lot of opinions about our lives, which was so silly. So I'm like, that, and just probably if I would have learned more about myself too at that time, like I just didn't know anything. I mean, I was like 23, hadn't ever been in a relationship, and so you're like, it was rough learning. And so I mean, we didn't have the tools back then, really. I feel like, not that it was that long ago, but like that we do now for like emotional intelligence and just knowing yourself. And I feel like I've learned so much more. Like I just didn't know anything about myself. And so like letting myself open to a person at that time was just like, Patrick got the rough deal of it. Yeah. So those are a few things.
Yeah. Like, too, I guess having the perspective of like, okay, now like I have chosen this person, like I'm waking up next to them every day kind of thing. Like, do you feel like there's anything that you're like, oh, I was actually wrong about that on the other side of dating, and this is what it's actually like now that I'm on this side, like where I'm married?
Yeah. I think marriage has been so fun. Like literally compared to dating, it has been a cakewalk, which I know is not everyone's story. Like most people are like, oh, like dating was so fun and marriage is so hard, but ours is the exact opposite. I feel like we got through so many hard things in our dating relationship that like when we got married, it was so fun. And like I was just like, man, this is great. Why didn't we do this years ago?
Yeah, like we were probably married about 4 years and we were hanging out with a couple that was married like a year or two longer than us. And so we were just hanging out with them one day. And they were like, oh my gosh, like, did you hit that 2-year mark where you're just like mad at each other and just like picking at each other? And it's just like, and Katie and I were like, no. Like, and not like our like relationship has been great. And obviously life has thrown tons at us. And we've had ups and downs in life and just like heartbreak in life. But yet we have been so close. And even coming back to like Katie's like dealing with anxiety, stuff like that. Katie was like a boss, like going after like, how do I get tools and resources, to the point where she's like a queen of like knowing how to navigate like anxiety stuff, so that when I face like I have a new role that I'm not used to, and I sometimes come home full of anxiety, I'm like, I don't know what these feelings are. And Kate's like, oh, that's called anxiety. I got you. And it's just like, there's tools now that we benefit. And so I don't know, we're just like, it's just so refreshing to be on the same page. And you know, when we are hit hard by something with life, a disappointment, a failure in life, like we have these tools to communicate, to fall back on. And I don't know, it's super fun, especially with children, because Lord, kids are awesome. And a lot,
Lord help us.
Lord help the babies.
Yeah, I think just having a harder dating time it kind of set us up for success and like really showed us the things that we need to work on. I remember going into marriage and I told Patrick, because when we were dating, I used to hold things in like for so long and just like ruminate on them until, I would like have an explosion. And I was like, hey, I'm not going to let something go 24 hours before I'm talking to you about something. And so I would do that. And like, I went through like a really hard season of like probably a year after we got married, of like really intense anxiety, crazy stuff going on. Just like in my thought life and stuff. And I would constantly be like, hey, this is what's going on in my head. Like, and he was just like, hey, I'm with you in this. And like some of the stuff that I would feel so shameful about, like he would just show up and be there with me in it. And he's like, all right, let's pray. Let's like do what we got to do. Let's get help. Like, do we need to see a counselor? Like, just like I felt like, man, there's nothing I can't tell this man that like will scare him away or anything like that. And then even in this like last season, I've really struggled with my health the last few years, and like he has been with me in it. And so, man, I don't know. I feel like, yes, it was so hard in our dating season, but like it was so good for us because it set us up for such success and like showed us like our strengths and our weaknesses and the things we need to grow in. So
so good. Yeah, just a side note, when we were talking about what to name this podcast, Andrea and my dad and I were talking, and he's like, should call it Finding a Patrick, because we were talking about how great Patrick was, and I'm like,
oh,
forgot about that.
Sweet.
That was sweet.
right.
I'm like, we're all just trying to find a Patrick. It's so
we're
true.
all just trying to find a Patrick out there, you know.
I love that Norm was like, good luck, Patrick. Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah, don't have any. Don't know, buddy.
Low
Don't
key,
know.
Kalli was like that too.
Yeah. Good luck.
No, Patrick did ask me. It was the night before he proposed, and he's like, "Do you know she's gonna say yes?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." Told it to him straight.
That was really comforting. What I needed to hear.
Yeah, really helped.
And I have to say, like, this is really cool. Like, not to get too cheesy, but like this is such like just listening to like your guys' stories and like the advice you're giving and just like the life lessons. There's just so much like gold in this podcast. And like, I don't know, I just like this is such a vulnerable thing for you guys to do, and such a wild topic to go over, that it's just cool to have this. And like even listening, like I'm not dating, I don't ever want to date again, hallelujah.
Patrick listens though in his truck on the way to work.
Yeah, I listen to it and I'm just like, man, like there's so much like gold in this and so many things that's like, if I would have known. Bring it to the people.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. And I think you guys shared some really good stuff in your story that I'm like, I can relate, of like anxiety and just, I've had really messy dating and I've shamed myself for it. And I'm like, well, like it's okay to be messy in our dating, because I think we do want it to be perfect. We just want to be like, God told me, I know I'm going to marry that person and we're on the same page, and they propose and then I say yes and then we're married. And I'm just like, is that realistic, And so it's refreshing to hear some of your story. I hate that you had to go through it, but I'm thankful for where you are today.
Yeah. Something I hear too, Katie, in your story is just like really knowing yourself and knowing how you show up in relationships is 100%. So important, because people show up differently. And if you just hold yourself to this standard of somebody who just, knew from day one and it was super straightforward for them, and, like it's just, then it's not fair, because like you're not them, it's like you were saying, Patrick, like it's your story. And so it's unfair to like, decide that, no, I need to show up this way. And if I can't show up this way, like, that's it. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's really important to know yourself and go after growth like you did, Katie, but also like know how you show up, because it might not look the way that you think it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And that's just your opportunity to like kind of go after like, okay, what do I need to work on? Like, what is this bringing up in me that would be brought up with anybody? Because it's my personality, and it's, you know, it's these things that I need to like figure out.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say, like, I mean, you guys are like some of my favorite people of all time. But I feel very protective of you both and over your story, just because I'm like, oh, these are two like incredible people who love the Lord and were trying their best. And like, I always just hated it when people gave you guys crap over like timelines and stuff. I'm like, they're trying to figure it out. Like, let them alone and they'll get there one way or the other. And so I'm just really proud of you guys and how you figured it out. You had the hard conversations. And I love, Patrick, how consistent you were, how steady you were. And Katie, I loved that you were like, I'm going to talk about these really hard things to talk about, like attraction and seeing a future with you. And that's important. So scary and so vulnerable. And you guys did it. And like, your wedding day was the absolute best. And I just love you both, and just the life that you've created and the culture that you've set up for your marriage is just like so beautiful. And now I get to talk to you about my dating anxieties and issues. And Katie's like, yep, totally normal. And it's great. So good. I'm thankful, and I love you guys. So good. So
yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on and sharing and being vulnerable and taking the risk. And honestly, I think it's like, it will be like really healing and almost like a like relief to people who are trying to make themselves show up a certain way, you know? But yeah, like, you guys just, I think I heard too, like, you really just were surrendered to the Lord. You really wanted to please him, and you were really taking marriage seriously because he takes it seriously. So all of those are like such beautiful things. So we really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing with us. And Lauren, what did you think? Like, you hadn't heard any of that story at all.
I mean, I'm still ruminating.
Lauren, were you in a whirlwind?
I'm still in a whirlwind. I like have a low tension headache, I think, because I'm just like, what's gonna happen? I think what was really interesting, and I like, the only thing I kept thinking was, I felt like God was saying for Katie's story is like, I wanted to give Katie the ability to choose. Like, I just like how God really does love us to have like choices and agency. And I just felt like that's actually was like God's kindness of like, oh yeah, we get to choose our life, like taking that risk. And we just want God at times to tell us exactly what to do. And I think he's like, no, you can make a choice. And then from there, I'll honor it, or guide you, or pick you up if you fall on your face. And that's the part of life that's so terrifying, but it's so beautiful. And it makes us human, is that partnership with God of taking risk. And so I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, why, like, God was waiting for you to choose what you wanted to do.
100%.
So
Love that he also kind of gave you like a good job.
He threw me a bone at the end.
I remember that
he's like, you've done great, here you go.
we were in the middle of like another like tough conversation, I think, and Katie is like, this just happened. And I remember just like being so like, I don't know, I was through that story, even though it was for Katie, I was so blessed too. And like, oh, like, that's so refreshing to hear. It's so nice.
Because I was so desperate for it, and it was just like, oh, it felt just like a breath of fresh air, that I was like, oh, he's on this.
All those rule breakers who prophesy dates, mates, and babies are like, they actually feeling validated right now.
Don't do it.
Everyone's
not even once.
But thank you, that
Rein
Patrick.
it in. Rein it in.
Random Patrick brushing his teeth.
Random
sounds a little creepy, but
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but it worked out. Okay?
Worked out. Man. Well, Patrick, if you could just like sing us out, like that'd be really great.
Yeah. I'll grab my guitar and sing Love.
Yeah.
For the way it is.
Yes. Or you can sing my song that you wrote for me.
Oh, good. Yeah.
You did.
Talking in how she kind of dated Patrick.
Any way she could.
That's actually the only one you can lead us out with because we can't pay for the rights to the other ones. So
the rights. Need an original.
No, we were at like a youth thing, and I don't know why. Patrick was always just like the nicest to me, not just because I was Katie's sister, but that maybe a little bit. But he randomly just like started strumming and just started singing like my name, but like spelled it out, and then pretty soon at the end, everyone that's in the room is singing this song and like waving their hands back and forth, and so
that's so sweet.
It's really carried us. So.
Oh my gosh.
The name of the song is K is for Chocolate Kisses. So
there you go.
That's amazing.
That sounds like a hit.
It is.
It's a catchy tune, I'm not gonna lie.
You could probably scrounge it up on my Facebook, like, years and years and years ago.
We'll assign that to Lauren because she's the only one on Facebook right now.
That's true.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Yes. Oh,
man. Does anyone have any last thoughts for the Christians who date out there?
Nope.
So many.
After this long, no.
So many, but not enough.
All right, perfect. Well, if you joined us, thank you so much for joining us. We hope this story just gave you some encouragement and some hope and just takes the pressure off that it doesn't have to be perfect from day one. And you're allowed to have fun and like take as much time as you need to get to know somebody and and just surrender it to the Lord and surrender it to mentors like these two did. And we're all just doing our best out here, seriously.
That's right.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. So thanks for being here and we love you all. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.